Let me refresh.
No, yeah.
There it goes.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, I guess we can get started.
Great.
Patty, do you want to do the introductions? You're muted.
Oh, great. Hi, welcome. I'm so glad all of you that could join us today. It was great. I'm excited to let you know we have LaunchCode with us, and LaunchCode, we've had a relationship with them for a couple years now, and they have just such a fantastic program. And I can't wait to hear. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm echoing. I don't want to. All right, sorry about that. So I am excited for you to meet. We have Kathy and John, both from LaunchCode, and they have wonderful things to tell you about their program and the opportunities that are available to you after high school. Now, what I would ask you to do, if you have questions, please put them in chat. And what we will do is address them at the end of the presentation. They have a short presentation with lots of time for questions afterwards. So be thinking of questions as they're presenting, put them in the chat, and we'll address those right at the end. So I would like to go ahead and pass this on to which one of you are starting, Kathy or John?
I'm sorry.
Great, thank you, Kathy.
Hi, good morning. My name is Kathy McCadden, and I am the Donor Relations Manager at LaunchCode. John Wilbright, who you will meet in just a little bit, and I will be talking to you today a little bit about the tech industry and LaunchCode. LaunchCode, we are a national nonprofit. We are headquartered in St. Louis, and we are dedicated to creating pathways to economic opportunity and upward mobility through free education, apprenticeships, and job placement and technology. So a lot of time people think tech jobs, they tend to think of websites, gaming, app development, tech support, things like that. But you all know that it's a lot more than that. Tech jobs are everywhere and are an aspect of all businesses and operations. There are a variety of career paths that one can take in the tech industry, including becoming a computer and information research scientist, computer network architect, software developer, information systems manager, database administrators, operation analysis, scrum masters, web developers, just to name a few. From startups to huge Fortune 500 corporations, everyone has a need for tech in one form or another. And the tech industry is growing so fast that the tech talent pipeline can't keep up with it. Code.org reports that over 400,000 open computing jobs, there are over 400,000 open computing jobs nationwide, but only 70,000 computer science graduates entered the workforce last year. So that means for approximately every 6 open computing job, only 1 new person is added to the tech talent pool. So it's pretty obvious that traditional talent pipelines just are not producing enough technologists to fill the open jobs of today or the ones that will be created in the future. And so that is how LaunchCode came to be. When founding the payment processor Square, Jim McKelvey wanted to have a development shop here in his hometown of St. Louis, but there just weren't enough software engineers in our community to do the work of building the platform. So all of those jobs wound up in Silicon Valley. In 2013, Jim McKelvey came back to St. Louis and founded LaunchCode to address this tech talent shortage. At the time, it sounded a little bit like a long shot, free job placement services and technology for people without the traditional resume credentials, but with the skills, passion, drive, and aptitude to succeed. But it worked. And then later, after realizing the doors still weren't open wide enough, LaunchCode started providing free tech education so those unable to gain the skills via other avenues could still seize these amazing opportunities. And today, LaunchCode continues expanding our programs so that we are able to fulfill our mission to build a skilled workforce by creating pathways for driven people seeking careers in technology. At LaunchCode, we believe if you can do the job, you should get the job. With our Our innovative model helps to remove barriers and open doors to aspiring technologists from all walks of life. We value passion, drive, and aptitude over credentials, and we believe that companies should too. Around 85% of the people that we place into tech jobs do not have a 4-year computer science degree. While the average computer science degree costs over $40,000 and the average coding boot camp costs nearly $12,000, LaunchCode's programs have always been and will always be provided at no cost to our students. And our students are more diverse than the current tech workforce and reflect the communities that we serve. So in 2020, of our students enrolled last year, 46% identified as people of color and 55% identify as women. Traditionally, digital skills have not been widely accessible to many demographics and populations. And at LaunchCode, we are challenging that. And then when launch coders are finished with our program, they leave job ready and have the qualities needed by our company partners. So over 150 companies ranging from small startups to Fortune 500 corporations hired launch coders in 2019 and 2020 alone. Our innovative apprenticeship program provides a low risk way for companies to add diverse, fresh tech talent to their team and to give our students that extra boost that they need to grow their career in technology. And launch coders stay and grow within the industry. So according to a recent survey of past launch coders placed at companies, between 2013 and 2018, about 2/3 of launch coders stayed at their original placement company for more than 2 years, and 99% still work in the tech industry. It is an industry where the sky's the limit and you're constantly growing and learning new things. So I'm sure by now you are wondering what LaunchCode's programs are exactly. What do students learn? How do you apply? And that is where John comes in. So now I'd like to introduce you to John Wilbright, one of LaunchCode's candidate engagement managers and a LaunchCode alumni. John will be able to tell you more about the specific details of our programs and shed more light into what you could benefit from LaunchCode.
Thank you, Sally. Hey, everybody. It's good to be here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screens. I've got a little presentation for you all. Like Sally said, I want to kind of give you a little bit more insight as far as what we provide in our programs, what you can expect from our program, and the entire process of applying to one of those programs, and anything in between that you guys all might be curious about. But I do want to say I'm very good about talking about points that are on slides further down the line. So I'm going to try not to talk ahead as much as I can, but really bad habit of mine, so please excuse that. But anyways, here we go. So our programs, what we provide here at LaunchCode. First and foremost, the goals of all of these classes that are listed here, LC 101, Coder Girl, Codecamp, and our apprenticeship program, which comes after those 3 programs. The goal is to teach you the skills that you need to launch a career in tech, whatever that career looks like. All the skills that you're going to be learning here, like Kathy had mentioned, there's plenty of different job titles that you can have, and everything that you learn here can apply to any of those titles in some way, shape, or form. So we want to provide you with a strong, well-rounded skill set, emphasize what we deem essential for success as a professional developer, and what those developer tools look like. And that comes in the form of problem solving throughout the class. That's where most of your learning is done. So yeah, we've got our LC 101 program here. What is that? It's a 20-week program. It's part-time. It's not full-time. We do have a full-time program, and I'll talk about that in just a little bit. But we emphasize web development in LC 101. So this is for any individual that's starting from ground zero, that knows nothing about coding, programming, has had no exposure in the past, but that's completely fine. That's kind of what we build the program for. It covers JavaScript in our first unit. So our first unit is going to be 10 weeks long, 2 classes per week. Those classes last 3 hours. I have a little bit more on that later, but our unit 2 would then jump into Java and C# as kind of like a skill track and things of that nature. But it's a combo of self-study and prep work. So it's a flipped classroom model for LC 101 Coder Girl. And then also some in-class time for group activities with your fellow students. So yeah, what do we teach? We teach HTML and CSS, of course, and JavaScript and Angular in that first unit. So that is really going to be covering things like, variables. We're going to be doing data types, typecasting, comparison operators, data structures, so arrays and objects, functions, scope, what scope look like, unit testing, test-driven development, objects, classes, how to use the terminal, what file structure looks like, version control with Git and GitHub. So those are kind of the things that we're going to start to teach you in that fundamental process, that first kind of hit the ground running learning experience. So that's unit 1. That's that first 10 weeks that you would expect. Unit 2, so we're going to jump into either Java or C#. It's an option for some students. However, some classes we kind of pick based on what we're seeing in the tech environment, what we're seeing the most need for. But similar to the first unit, we touch on a few different things. So obviously C# and Java are going to be statically typed languages. So we're going to cover that. We're going to cover control flow, collections, objects, classes, of course, further, dive into that. And then also the pillars of, programming. So of object-oriented programming, sorry. So I use the acronym PI, even though sometimes people say that there's 4 pillars now, but you've got polymorphism, inheritance, encapsulation, and then sometimes abstraction can be included in that as well. And I believe it is now. But then we also dive further into kind of the model view controller design for building your web applications. That may be something that you are not familiar with. But the cool part of that is it's all in one spot. So that's the goal of kind of unit 2. Let's see what else we've got. So logistically, what's the class going to look like? What can you expect when you show up to each class? Each class, like I said, it is part-time, 3 hours per class. You show up. There's going to be a lecture with a lead instructor that usually lasts anywhere between 30 to 45 minutes. After that 30 to 45 minutes, you've got a small group that you would participate in. That small group has 10 to 12 students per 1 TA. Right now in a remote environment, we've been pairing our TAs. So you'll have 2 TAs per 20 to 24 students. And that kind of encourages more, participation. Something that we've found in this online remote world is that it's a lot different than teaching an in-person classroom. So we've been adjusting and learning along the way. But the studios that you would do with your fellow students is a group activity. So it's meant to build on what you've learned from your instructor, what you've learned in the pre-work, and then at the same time, use that knowledge to complete your assignments that are required throughout the unit. And that's in the first unit and the second unit. One thing that I do want to say about the assignments and the studios, and it's a common misconception whenever students join our classes. It's a free class. It's entirely free. So that's awesome. You don't really find that too often. But the catch of the flip side of that is it's not an automatic pass. You do have to complete your work. You do have to complete your assignments on time. Otherwise, you are potentially going to be withdrawn from the class. It's not just a show up and graduate automatically. So that's something that students are surprised by, and how difficult learning something like this is. So the fact that you've already started to do this, you'd have a big jump on the game, and it's a really good field to get into. So I just did want to mention that. So moving on from LC 101, we've got Coder Girl, which is 24 weeks or 45 weeks, depending on the class and how we're going to deploy that. Also free curriculum, but it's developed by tech professionals. So sometimes we have instructors come in and they develop their own curriculum for what they're seeing the need for. And I've got a slide just after this that's going to show some of what you would be learning in Coder Girl. But this is also a flipped classroom model, same thing as LC 101. So you're going to do some prep work prior to showing up to class, and then attend lecture and then expand on that prep work with the studio. So what do we teach in Coder Girl? So we cover things that we don't cover in LC 101. So one of those big things would be data analysis. So something that's going to come along with that, data visualization. A lot of people talk about data and gathering data from classrooms. Maybe that's demographics or attendance or assignment completion. But what does that data actually look like on the screen? So that's going to be data visualization. Further expand on SQL, touch base on user experience. So the actual planning process for any kind of web application, what's that look like? What's your UI look like? And then data science. Python is something that we used to cover in LC 101. We've transitioned to JavaScript. JavaScript is very popular right now. One thing that I will say about JavaScript is it's not going anywhere. All of our browsers are built on JavaScript. So until we get new screens, which who knows how long that's going to be, JavaScript's going to be around, and it's always a good language to start with. So yeah, that's just a little bit here on the Coder Girl stuff. Class logistics are the same. There's pre and prep work for class, lectures and activities along the way, but it is still part-time. Here's a little kind of like a timeline graphic as far as the comparison between LC 101 and Coder Girl, but it's 3 units, and then we would deploy you into the apprenticeship program rather than 2 units in LC 101. So Codecamp, this is the opposite model of the LC 101 and the Coder Girl. So this is a full-time boot camp where you're going to be going 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. So that's a class where you would do all of your prep work. Well, there is no prep work. You're doing all of the work in class. So you're studying with your students. You're going over whatever the assignments are, whatever the material is for that day, expanding on it with the instructor, diving further in, and still doing studios. So it's a more in-depth, robust program for those that have the time to complete it. And the idea is it's a faster timeline. So it's only 14 weeks instead of 20 weeks. So it's going to be a much faster learning process. It's very it can be very intense. That's a lot of time to commit to something like this, but we've seen a lot of success with Codecamp. So yeah. Same thing in Codecamp. Like I said, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Angular, and then backend Java or backend C# is what we're going to be teaching in Codecamp, just on a faster timeline. So the application process for all these programs, what does that look like? For LC 101, Coder Girl, and Codecamp, it can vary a little bit for Codecamp, but for LC 101 and Coder Girl, we would send out applications. You as a student or any person in general would fill out a demographic form, of course, fill out an essay portion and a problem-solving assessment. So the essay portion is going to be tell us about a time where you had to overcome an obstacle. Tell us about a time where you had to teach yourself something, and then why do you want to learn programming? Why do you want to learn how to code? Those are kind of the 3 things that we want to see you expand on a little bit prior to entering into the class. The problem-solving assessment, that's going to look something similar to what you would see on an SAT or an ACT in the math section. That kind of gives us a good idea of where you're at currently, but the curriculum, all of our curriculum is modeled for the high school graduate. So all of you would be a good fit for any of these programs. Codecamp can be a little bit different. I've seen in the past, it's one thing that I will say about code. I want to talk about the numbers really quick and tell you and give you a reason why it is different. So LC 101, typically we have 150 to 160 students in that class. Coder Girl, about the same. Codecamp, we usually only have about 30 to 33 students as it's full-time. You're not going to find as many students that are available for a full-time class. Typically, we have about 1,000 people apply for LC 101 in St. Louis. In our Kansas City programs, usually around like 700 to 800. Same thing for Coder Girl. Codecamp, what we've done in the past is interview individuals in person. We really want to know that you're committed to that class and going to be able to spend the time and come in every day. Well, that was when classes were in person. Right now it is remote. So that looks a little bit different, but so the application process and there can be an interview process for Codecamp if that's something that you are personally interested in. One thing that we do need students to provide is their own laptop. We have provided laptops to students in the past, but it's not something that we would be able to do for every student. So that is one of the requirements that we have for the class. And it's not much as far as the requirements. I think we look for anywhere between like 4 gigs of RAM. That's pretty much one of the only requirements, not a tablet typically, and you're pretty much good to go. But the RAM is relatively important. And here's the LC 101 versus Coder Girl. So 2 units in the LC 101. That Coder Girl's got a 3 unit. Codecamp's 9 to 5, 14 weeks. and then into the apprenticeship program, which I will talk about next. Yeah, beyond education. So as we dive into getting ready for an apprenticeship program. So what does it look like when you graduate from LC 101, from Coder Girl, from Codecamp? We have a liftoff program, which is optional. That's going to be building a personal project or a portfolio for you to demo to company partners that are interested in, seeing what you've learned, how you've applied those skills to a project, a group project, and what you're going to use them for in the future. So we also do career readiness. So that's going to be helping you build a resume, build a LinkedIn profile, and kind of just, brand yourself personally, get your name out there. What can you do to make yourself known and get more exposure? But the apprenticeship program itself, a little bit more on that. So we connect you with our company partners after you graduate from our programs or liftoff. That apprenticeship is 3 months long. It is a paid apprenticeship and you do receive benefits during that apprenticeship. The idea is that after that 3 months, the company would then hire you on as a full-time salaried employee. We see anywhere between like an 85 to 90% transfer rate from apprentice to a full-time salary employee. That 10 to 15% wiggle room can be anything from, say you didn't like the technologies you were working with or the people or what the company was about in general. Or sometimes the candidate is just not a great fit for that company. That is the flip side of it. I will say that you would know what you're getting into before actually jumping into an apprenticeship program. It's not something that you're forced into by any means. We would come to you and say, hey, we've got this opportunity. Are you interested in it? Yes or no? If not, that's great. But if you are, that's also great. It's fully up to you whether or not it's something that you would want to pursue. So yeah, I think that's a little bit about the apprenticeship program. I'd love to answer any further questions. But yeah, average starting salary for our launch coders after they're hired full-time is $55,000 a year. That escalates rather quickly. Once you're 1, 2, 3 years on the job, that's going to look more like 85 to 90,000 and maybe in the 6-figure range. It escalates very quickly once you get a little bit of experience. Yeah. So I've got a little bit of a fact sheet here for anybody that's interested. I'll hold it on the screen for a little bit so you can watch the video, go back later and take a look at it. Under the location, the first day of class, that's just going to be a random, not a random, but a planned date and time, nothing specific. That's why I've just got the, a variable here for that date and time. So yeah, I think that's all I've got. Let me double check. Yeah. So any questions from you all would be fantastic. I would love to hear them, and I'm sure Kathy would as well.
Well, we do have a couple of questions in the chat. One student is asking, and you might have answered this, is LaunchCode strictly web development?
So we do focus on web development. Our Coder Girl class does dive a little bit further into like data science and data analysis. Is there something else that you're curious about? Like that if there's something specific that you're curious about, I might be able to tell you if that is in our curriculum or not. But if you're referring to like maybe DevOps or data science, that's something that we're currently building.
So I'll see if that student types anything else into the chat. And it looks like Miss Venturella had a question.
Okay, so I did have a question. I was wondering, so what is your recommendation? So like a senior that was really interested in it, what should their timeline look like on when should they really realistically try to get their application in to make sure they're in to start in the next fall?
Yeah, good question. So we've got classes that run year round in St. Louis especially. So I believe we have one that just started. So we'll most likely have another one starting close to summertime. As soon as the student is ready, or as soon as you think that you're ready or want to take something like this on, now is a great time. You're all in a fantastic position just now leaving high school. If this is a career that you really feel passionate about. Our turnaround process. So from what I understand, you've all already done a good amount of learning and it's similar to what we teach. So that puts you in a good place. but the entire process, we usually say takes around a year. So from when you start a class, say that's LC 101, Coder Girl, or Codecamp. Codecamp's a little bit different. So I'll just speak specifically to LC 101 and Coder Girl. Once you start one of our classes to the time you get placed into an apprenticeship is about a year-long process.
And our applications are, they open sporadically throughout the year. If you want to get on our mailing list, our email list, so that you're notified when applications are open for our different programs, just go to our website, launchcode.org, scroll to the bottom, and you'll be able to find how to sign up for our e-newsletter. And then you can update your mailing preferences to make sure that you are notified whenever a class is open. Applications are open for a course, so you don't miss out on that.
Do you follow up with your students as after they're employed, once they've made the conversion? And do you see that many of them choose to take advantage, I'm assuming, of their company's tuition reimbursement program to maybe continue their education once they're employed part-time?
Once they're employed part-time?
I'm sorry, to continue their education part-time once they're employed. So take night, evening classes.
Good question. Kathy, jump in and if you have anything to add, but I do have something to speak on it. I didn't know if you wanted to go first.
Go ahead, John.
No, yeah. So what I've often seen with many of our apprentices is that when they get hired on for an apprenticeship, what they're going to be learning is usually completely different than what we've taught them. So like we might be teaching you, well, we are teaching you JavaScript with Angular and then Java with Spring or C# with .NET, but they might go to a job and start doing PHP Laravel development, or they might start working with Jenkins or Docker to do some DevOps work. So usually there's not like that desire to go and learn more part-time outside of that apprenticeship, but there is the option to do so. And I have seen companies provide that stipend or extra, the jump or the funds to go and learn more.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question too. Do you find that the companies hire the position, like right out of LaunchCode, for the same positions that they would for a 4-year degree or a 2-year degree? Do you find that isn't a problem with them not having the degree for these companies?
It has not been a problem. We have worked really hard to let our company partners know how great our students are and our graduates are. And a lot of times we actually hear from hires and companies that are company partners that they prefer launch coders over those with that 4-year degree, because launch coders have more of a desire to learn and grow, and they are more grateful for their job and the role that they've received. And they also bring, a different culture and a different mix to the table. And it actually helps their current team grow and learn as well.
Yeah, and that's not to say that a degree won't help you either. We're not saying that, because it absolutely will. But if you're capable of after completing this program and probably working on what you've already done with Patty and Tim, you're most likely going to be able to do what a 4-year computer science degree graduate can do. What they're going to have an advantage on might be a little bit of algorithm work, but they don't get as much exposure to like actually developing a web application. So what I'm saying is, if you're able to do the work and you continue to learn more, you will get a job regardless of whether or not you have a degree or not.
And that is kind of the whole point of our apprenticeship program. Rather than just throwing you into a job as an apprentice, you are getting paid, but you are learning too. So you're learning on the job and you're getting hands-on experience in the field itself, which is invaluable.
True.
Great.
That's
Thank
very
you.
true. So the student who asked that first question did follow up with the different, types of coding and programming she was talking about. So she was thinking more about courses in C#, C++.
Mm-hmm. So C++ is not something that we teach, but C# is something that we do teach.
Okay, and then another student is asking, what are the companies, if you can share their names, that you use for your internships in St. Louis?
Well, we have a lot, as you heard earlier. Just in the past 2 years, we've placed people in within 150 different companies. But just to name a few, some of our bigger company partners are, Centene, Mercy Hospital, Boeing. We have placed some people at Edward Jones, and then there's small startups that we place people at. Wand USA. Just really, Doherty Business Solutions is another place, and Gray Bar is another place that we've placed people. So really, it is a wide range of different types of companies that we place our apprenticeships at.
Okay, and then you've already kind of answered this, but I think one student is asking for clarification. So if he would decide to continue his education after he graduates, how could LaunchCode fit into that somehow?
Absolutely. Yeah. Are they asking, would LaunchCode be a benefit to their learning process?
So his question word for word is, does this interfere with college? If someone was to apply to LaunchCode, would it interfere with his ability to go to college?
Depending on the time that you have.
Mm-hmm.
And what time your classes are for college, you can do both if you have the time and that's something that you want to do. Because LaunchCode programs are usually at night. Typically, go ahead, Patty.
Oh, I was just going to say, so is there any way to, if they have a 4-year computer science degree, someone does and is finding a hard time getting a job, could they go into your apprenticeship program? Is there a way to bypass the training?
That is correct. So you can bypass the training if you already have the experience. You can directly apply for the apprenticeship program. That process looks a little bit different. You would meet with someone like myself, a candidate engagement manager, and there would be a few topics. So first and foremost, we would want to just have a conversation with you to talk about what you've learned, where you've learned it, how you've applied those skills into any kind of personal projects, that kind of thing. So it's soft skills, hard skills, and then also a live coding assessment. So we're going to do a problem with you on the spot and have you code it outside of your editor to kind of really put you in a tough spot. So we're not going to give you those helper filler statements to where, it's going to suggest something for you. We really want to take you out of your comfort zone. So that process does look a little bit different, but you can apply for that at any time if you think that you're ready for it.
John, as an alumni and someone that works very closely with our students in the classes, why don't you tell them about, how much time outside of class it typically takes? Because the majority of the work is outside of class. And that's where people tend to fall behind, is they underestimate the work that they have to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we've mentioned, I'm a graduate of LaunchCode's LC 101 program. We expect anywhere from 10 to 15 hours of outside of class work. So that's in combination with the 6 hours of in-class time work, come to somewhere between 21 to 25 hours, give or take. Some people it takes less, some people it takes more, but that's really what it would take to be able to pass the program comfortably and not put yourself in a tough spot.
And that's on a weekly basis?
That is on a weekly basis. So that's still part-time, but 20 hours a week is a lot to commit to something. Mm-hmm.
That's helpful information. So do the students have any other questions? Feel free to type them into the chat. Mr. Keenan, Ms. Hadley, do you have any questions for Kathy and John?
One of the frequently asked questions that I would speak to is, it's similar to can I do the college and the LaunchCode program at the same time? A lot of the students that I've seen come into class, they ask me, hey, there's this other boot camp that I have the opportunity to attend. I was thinking about doing that and LaunchCode's boot camp program or LaunchCode's program. I think there's pros and cons. The con is you're going to really stretch yourself thin. You might be learning some different skills in that other boot camp, but realistically, it's kind of like the mile wide, inch deep, or the inch wide, mile deep concept. So you can learn one programming language and really solidify that knowledge, or you can learn 10 different programming languages and kind of spread yourself thin. I'm not saying either one is better than the other. It's good to have knowledge on on, most topics, or at least be familiar with what languages pair with what frameworks and databases and libraries, that kind of thing. But if you teach yourself Java or C# or JavaScript, you're going to be able to learn a new programming language relatively quickly, just because you're teaching yourself how to think like a programmer. So that's one of the frequently asked questions. And I think in my experience, the best answer is to really focus on one program at a time until you feel like you've really grasped it and you have extra time on your hands and you're comfortable with one program. That's great. But the first couple weeks of our LC 101 program start out relatively light, and then it ramps up really quickly. So that's where people really catch themselves, is they're like, oh, this is kind of a breeze in this first week of introduction. And then week 2 and 3 come around and they really start to get hit hard with, assignments and homework and studios, and then they can't keep up. So keep that in mind moving forward on whether or not you want to take on too much information at one time.
Well, I guess
So-
I think that, oh, sorry,
Go on.
Joe.
We're all talking at once. My students are in my program because we take things a little bit slower. They have IEPs. A lot of them have different needs. If you find someone is willing and really trying, but they're having a hard time picking it up, how would that work for them? Do you have people that would be able to step in and spend some extra time with them, or would you recommend they go through a program twice, or how would that work?
That's a good question. And I mean, our students come from all walks of life. You never really know what kind of problems one student's going to have compared to another. And it does sound similar to, things that we've had in the past, but that's what the mentors and people like myself are here for. If someone gets kind of caught and stuck behind, and then they're starting to really, feel the pressure of falling behind the other students, we do have a process for those students that fell behind to kind of get them back on track. So there is help and additional support for those kind of students. Yes.
And
Thank you.
I'd like to add to that, their fellow students in the class, they want to help too. So, everyone leans on each other and they work together to problem solve. And I've seen this when we were able to have it in class, our class in person. I've seen, people come to class early to help each other out and do study sessions before the actual class takes place. So a really great sense of community is built while in the program, and people are comfortable leaning on one another for help and support and guidance.
Mr. Keenan, did you have a question?
Yeah, so with my juniors this year, come March, they will be taking an MTA certification exam over HTML and CSS. And then next year, when they're a senior, we're thinking of kind of implementing, another certification exam for them to do with Python. So would that have, I guess my question is going to be kind of two questions. One is, if the students receive those certifications while they're still with me, their junior or senior year, does that help them in being able to progress or maybe start a little further along in the program, as opposed to having to come in and start on day one? I guess it's kind of like a testing out type of thing. If the LC 101 starts off with HTML and CSS, if they have this HTML CSS certification, can they bypass maybe the first couple of 2 or 3 weeks, or however long that curriculum is, for the HTML and CSS portion? And I guess the second part of my question would be, a lot of the students, when you talk about, hey, we've got these industry certifications that they could take that, looks really great on a resume. Are there any kind of certifications for other languages that LaunchCode offers? So if a student goes through either, their boot camp or their Coder Girl or anything like that, are there any other industry certifications that are available to them that they could take either through LaunchCode or, maybe to pay for themselves, but still be able to take, and so on and so forth?
Yeah, good question. So the first part, typically we don't admit students into like the middle of a unit, but we have brought in students for like the second unit of class, which is further along than that first unit. So that first 10 weeks, you're really going to learn your computer science fundamentals. So I think it would be possible to join in on that second unit, or the liftoff program where you're going to be building your personal project or your portfolio, your resume, getting job ready, and then jumping into the apprenticeship program. So that is possible, yes, on that first part, Tim. The second part, as far as certifications go, we are partnered with the community colleges in St. Louis, and it's works towards credit. Our certificates work towards credit hours with those community colleges. So that is also something that we provide. You do get a certificate after graduating each class from us, in whatever language or technology that you were studying. And that's something that you can add to your LinkedIn profile. But Kathy, go ahead.
I was just going to say that at LaunchCode, we've worked really hard to develop these amazing relationships with companies within our communities so that they know that launch coders have the skills that are needed. They know that launch coders can take on whatever challenges that they are provided. So just having being in the LaunchCode program is that like stamp of approval for a lot of companies.
So I was wondering, do you have pretty good success if someone completes your program, is able to pass everything and do everything you ask out of them? Or do you have a pretty high rate of placement for the apprenticeship program? They can all get jobs right away in the apprenticeship?
You know, we have good success with connecting our graduates with companies and interviews. It's one of those, we help you get those interviews. From there, it is up to you. It is up to you to get the job after we get you in the door. So, and that's something that we teach you during our liftoff program is interview skills, how to work in a team setting and things like that. So, you know, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And that's kind of the situation here is we'll get you those interviews and then it is up to you to actually land that job. But
Sure.
We will advocate for you and we will push for you.
Great. And again, like with the industry certifications, once they have that apprenticeship experience, that probably speaks volumes. Then they don't worry about those as much because they can see you have real job experience, right?
Yes, exactly.
We just had another question come in and just clarification. So the student is asking if they can apply to LaunchCode after they've already graduated from college, and we know that the answer is yes.
Yes.
And so if a student is having a tough time finding a job or just wants to add this to their resume, that certainly is an option. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So any other questions? Any other thoughts?
Just one quick comment. So I had a student in this last year, and she would come to get some help sometimes on some of her projects from me because she also wanted to show me how good she was doing. And you guys challenge them. You do a good job. So Tim, you don't have to worry. They will be challenged even from day one. Their projects are good. And I was going to say it was amazing curriculum. So I just was very impressed by what I saw, just for the record.
Yeah, and one thing that I also will say, our curriculum is always available to look at. It's all open source and free. So I can share that in the chat here, and then you can all share that with your students as well if you want to take a look at that curriculum.
That's awesome. But yeah, and the projects were great. You really got deep thinking there. Nice critical thinking.
That's a great testimonial. And I think we've had other students from North and South Tech who have gone through your program and been successful. I just can't name them right now. Yeah. So thanks for sharing that curriculum with us, John. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Well, so we're right at about 45 minutes. I think probably we've covered everything we need to cover. I can't thank you enough, Kathy and John, for joining us today. This has been really helpful information as our students start thinking about what their post-secondary plans will be. So, okay, I think we'll go ahead and conclude the session. Thank you so much, everyone.
All right,
Yeah,
thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Take care.
Thank you.